More police forces investigate child abuse in football while hundreds call the helpline. Immigration hits a record high and the radical plan to cut pollution. You're watching 5 News Tonight. More than a quarter of police forces are investigating football abuse allegations, and the new England manager says one victim is a former teammate.
The bravery of the players that have come forward is exceptional, and to hear the stories is heartbreaking.
The rise in migrants from Europe as an estimated 650,000 people came into the country in a year. And drivers are targeted in plans to reduce pollution. Also tonight, we're talking about the number of children who gamble. Research reveals almost 500,000 11 to 15-year-olds gamble every week. And life after Strictly. We catch up with politician turned dancer Ed Balls.
The whole family's been at times a bit embarrassed, but they've also loved it, I think.
Good evening, welcome to 5 News Tonight. I'm Matt Barbett. The child sex abuse scandal in football seems to heighten by the day. 350 victims have now reported abuse within UK clubs, and 16 police forces are involved in investigating the claims. Just this evening, Greater Manchester Police said it has identified 10 suspects. Earlier, the new England manager, Gareth Southgate, said the allegations from former players, mostly from his generation, are heartbreaking, as Julian Drucker reports.
He is the future of English football. But today, once again, the focus was on the game's past. It was confirmed the number of victims who've reported child sexual abuse within the UK's football clubs is well into the hundreds. For Gareth Southgate, the growing scandal has even touched his career.
Played with one of the players who's recently come forward, and the reality of that, as they have said, is that they haven't felt able to speak about that until this moment, and that's completely understandable. And of course, with the benefit of hindsight, you always relay then things that you've seen from the past and have an understanding of, okay, maybe that's why we saw things we saw.
But is football any different today? Southgate, a dad of 2, believes things have changed.
I can also speak as a parent, and I think it's important. I've been involved in grassroots teams. Pretty much every charter standard club now has their own child protection officer. So it would be wrong to say that nothing's been done over the years.
Hello, you're through to an advisor at the NSPCC helpline.
The NSPCC's Special Abuse Hotline, set up just a week ago, has now had more than 860 calls. But as one of its organisers told 5 News, some allegations relate to the present day.
It would be naive to assume that there are not ongoing issues and concerns in football and in other sports as well. So certainly the nature of the concerns and the calls and the contacts that we're getting relate to historic and non-recent abuse, but also current concerns and situations as well.
The survivors keep speaking out. Former Newcastle player David Eatock was abused by youth team coach George Ormond, who's already been convicted of child sex offences. Today he appealed for Ormond to admit everything.
First of all, be a man and own up to what you've done, own up to what you are, and you need to get some help.
Football's darkest secret continues to hang over the game. There is still no sense how vast the problem truly is.
And Julian, the figures are staggering, vast as well. Just talk us through them.
Yes, so 860 calls to that NSPCC phone line. That's a large number, but it's not 860 people because multiple calls can come from more than one person. So far, 60 referrals have been made to over 100 different agencies across the UK. Compared to this point in the Jimmy Savile investigation, that is 3 times the number of referrals. That other big figure you mentioned, 350 victims, that includes these referrals, plus the people who phoned their local police forces in the last week.
And in the last hour, Greater Manchester Police has revealed more details of its investigation.
Yes, GMP has said that as of today, it's investigating reports from 35 victims and says it's identified 10 suspects. The Chief Constable tonight says the investigation could continue to grow. Now, today, Warwickshire and the Devon and Cornwall police forces have opened their own investigation. So at the moment, a quarter of all UK police forces are investigating abuse linked to football.
All right, Julian, many thanks. Immigration to the UK has hit a new high, according to the body that estimates the figure, the Office for National Statistics. It says 650,000 people arrived here in the year to June. But what's key is how many people stay. That's called net migration. And that figure hasn't really changed much, despite a government target to get it to less than 100,000. The numbers are often framed in the debate over Brexit, with some businesses saying they rely on EU workers to move forward. Simon Viger has more.
It was one of the big themes of the referendum, and the latest migration figures tell the story of the year leading up to Brexit. Net immigration remains at 1/3 The EU figures are a new record, meaning the government still has a long way to go to reach its target of tens of thousands by 2020.
The main obviously issue in the country is obviously housing, and obviously where are these people all going to stop? Where are they going to stay?
I'm an immigrant myself, and I shouldn't say that, but enough is enough.
It all depends on who is coming in. That's the main question is who is, what they're bringing into the UK.
Brompton Bikes is a great British success story where freedom of movement has several meanings. 1/4 of the workforce is from the EU.
At the moment, I'm taking it day by day. It's a little bit of uncertainty in what will happen next, but to be honest, it's a global company, Brompton, and I've got colleagues from all over the world.
It's a pretty good place to still seek opportunities, even after the exit of the European Union.
The refrain from the boss here is familiar. There just aren't enough Brits going for the jobs.
We don't sit there and actually say, right, OK, we want to employ 4 Polish, 3 Romanian. We employ good people, people hungry, people with... Some people have a skill set, some people not, but they're hungry to actually come in and work.
Total immigration in the year to June hit a new high of 650,000. Almost half of the new arrivals came from the European Union, 284,000. The net migration figure, the number of people who've entered the UK minus the number who've left, is now 335,000. That's just below the record of the previous year.
I don't think there's any great surprise that the figures are pretty much flatlining. And of course, the opportunity to really affect the numbers coming from the European Union will only flow from the deal we make following the Brexit negotiations.
Taking back control was the quick soundbite. Details of the new migration agreement will take rather longer to wrap up. Simon Viger, 5 News.
Now, the pilot of a plane carrying a Brazilian football team said he had run out of fuel moments before crashing in Colombia. The cockpit recording revealed the pilot made a distress call to air traffic controllers, pleading to land. 71 people died in the crash. There were 6 survivors. Moving video has also been released of the Chapecoense team on board, laughing and joking ahead of playing what was meant to be the biggest match of their lives. Here, a 15-year-old boy has been charged with the manslaughter of Polish man Arek Józwik, who was attacked in Essex in August. Initial reports suggested it was being treated as a possible hate crime, but that is no longer believed to be the case. A retired astronaut Buzz Aldrin has been airlifted from the South Pole after falling ill. The second man on the moon was visiting Antarctica in a tourist group when his health deteriorated. The White Desert Tour Company said Mr. Aldrin was stable under the care of a doctor. Listen to this. Nearly 500,000 children aged between 11 and 15 in England and Wales gamble every week. That's more than drink alcohol or smoke. The Gambling Commission is warning parents to be aware of the risks. It's found that 450,000 children are gambling regularly, and 9,000 of those are likely to be problem gamblers. The most popular forms of betting for children are fruit machines, having a private bet with friends, or getting hold of lottery scratch cards. Tim Miller from the Gambling Commission joins me now. Let's just talk about those definitions, Tim, because fruit machines, you can see they'll be problematic. Scratch cards, they're not meant to have them under the age of 16, I believe. But betting with mates over how hard your conker is or something like that doesn't seem too bad.
And hopefully for most children it won't be a problem, but what we do know is that whilst gambling can be an enjoyable pastime for many people, sometimes some people can have a real problem with that. And we just want to raise awareness for parents that actually probably a larger number of children are gambling than we expected, particularly when you compare that to the number of children, for example, that are smoking or drinking.
But let's talk about what is concerning, though, is the access to gambling and money being made off children, which, I mean, that really is concerning for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it's worth bearing in mind that a number of these activities are legal forms of gambling. As say, that might be betting with friends, or it could be trying to win a toy on a crane machine, something like that. But certainly, we'd be particularly concerned if children are getting involved with underage gambling. And there are very clear rules in place to try and prevent that. We are very clear with operators what the expectations are with them. And we feel confident that we've got the right rules in place to try and minimise that harm.
OK, well, look, it's a big headline saying almost 500,000 kids are doing this. When you dig down and you say it's a real problem for 9,000, of course, that's significant, but still fairly small in comparison overall. What kind of things are they doing, and how much of a problem is it for those 9,000?
Yeah. So I think, 9,000 is 9,000 too many children, absolutely. I think with gambling-related harm, obviously one of the key problems will be the financial issues. Are children spending their pocket money, or indeed taking money from other sources to fund it? I think the hidden problem, though, sometimes with gambling is actually the time that people can spend gambling, the kind of time away from friends, from family, from their schoolwork. And that's a sort of problem that's not always easy to spot.
Time away from schoolwork. Do you think schools are doing enough to prepare children for the dangers, the enticements of things like gambling?
I think schools like us, and indeed everybody else, can always do more to help educate children around this. I recognise schools have lots of things they have to cover during the school day, so I wouldn't necessarily lay it all on their doors. But what we do know is that with developments with online, for example, perhaps part of e-safety could well look at gambling and the risks associated with it.
Yeah, because, unlike drinking and smoking, there aren't health risks per se with gambling. People can enjoy it, like you say, but they need to be aware of possible risks and pitfalls as they grow older, of course. Thank you very much indeed, Tim.
Thank you.
Speed limits and speed bumps could be changed as part of plans to reduce levels of deadly air pollution. The proposals are being suggested by the health watchdog NICE to cut harmful emissions from cars by encouraging a smoother driving style, as Charlotte Grant reports.
Yeah, we did some French.
French,
yeah.
did you? 9-year-old Lola doesn't live far from school, so it should be a straightforward walk home for her and her mum. But not when you live on one of the most polluted streets in the country, and not if, like Lola, you suffer from asthma so badly you've been hospitalised 5 times in the past few years.
It's quite overwhelming, the amount of pollution there is on our street, and the cars are just jammed up. And you may tend to cough a bit because it's quite
when we're crossing the road.
Yeah, it really smells.
So how to stop the harmful effects of air pollution? Well, the health watchdog NICE believes it's come up with some solutions. The recommendations include variable speed limits on motorways, as vehicles create more emissions when they're speeding up and slowing down. For the same reason, they want to redesign speed bumps on local roads and install no idling zones around schools to prevent parents leaving their engines on during school drop-offs.
The traffic on our roads is now at record levels. This is the first time the health watchdog has published guidelines on how to tackle air pollution, pointing out as many as 25,000 deaths a year can be linked to the harmful emissions and environmental risks associated with air pollution.
Air pollution is a public health crisis and it's affecting all of our health. So this guidance is really welcome, but we do need to see more action from the government to clean up our air.
These are proposals rather than policy, but the healthcare experts believe now is the time for air pollution to be taken seriously. Charlotte Grant, 5 News.
Still to come on 5 News tonight.
There are university lecturers, there are NHS workers, there are ourselves, helpers, carers. Anyone could become homeless at any moment.
Life without a proper home, the family is forced to live in temporary accommodation. And Ed Ball's on fire. He tells us about glitter balls and fake tan.
When they said to me, do you want a fake tan in the first week, I laughed. Because I thought you either got a tan on holiday or maybe you were under a sunbed.
We'll be having a ball after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News Tonight. At the end of a long day, many of us take going home for granted, but the reality for others is very different. Today, the charity Shelter warned almost 250,000 people are without permanent homes, and they say that is a conservative measure. Ruth Liptrott's been speaking to one family about how they are managing this winter.
When you think about homelessness, you probably think about people sleeping on the streets. But there's more to it than that. This family may have a roof over their heads and both parents are working, but they're homeless too. This is temporary accommodation, and it's their 4th place in 2 years.
A home is more than just a dwelling. A home is somewhere that you feel that you can put roots down, somewhere that you belong to. And if you're in somewhere that you're going from pillar to post or property to property, that's not home.
Their problems started when their oldest kids left home and they were penalised for having an empty bedroom. Since then, they've been moved again and again.
One particular property had rats in the garden, and they were so numerous you could almost pet them. You had mice crawling over your bed at night, and you had cockroaches festering everywhere.
At one point, the children were moved almost 2 hours away from their school, and all of the uncertainty has left them feeling very insecure.
The children do not want to leave you. So you have children crying, you have children acting out because they're so unsure and they know that you're unsure.
And Gillian and Mark aren't the only ones in this situation. In their previous temporary accommodation, they met people from all walks of life.
There are university lecturers, there were NHS workers, there are ourselves, helpers, carers. Anyone could become homeless at any moment.
For now, the family are in Barking in East London. They like it here but haven't heard from their local authority about whether they'll be able to stay.
We feel more comfortable here, but we're not settled because we don't know the circumstances of our residency. Our mentality is still living out of a box.
With just over 3 weeks till Christmas, most of us are thinking about what we'd like. All this family want is to know where they'll be living. Ruth Liptrott, 5 News.
Now, Prince Harry and pop star Rihanna have taken an HIV test together to raise awareness on World AIDS Day. The pair took the test in Bridgetown on the island of Barbados as Harry's tour of the Caribbean comes to an end. It's the second time the Prince has taken a test in public in 5 months in an attempt to reduce the stigma surrounding the virus. But despite the work of such high-profile people, campaigners are warning that public attitudes to HIV and AIDS are stuck in the 1980s. According to the Terence Higgins Trust, myths about the virus are still entrenched in society. With me now is Justin Harbottle from the Trust and also Duncan Hamilton, who was just 21 years old when he was diagnosed with HIV. And Duncan, when you tell some people that you are HIV positive, what are the most ridiculous reactions you've had?
Some of the most ridiculous reactions I had, I've actually come surprisingly close to home. My best friend, who I was living with at the time, asked me, her first reaction to me telling her that was, oh God, could I have got it from sharing a glass with you? My employers asked, how long have you got?
How long have you got?
Yeah, they're all equally ridiculous questions. But
because once upon a time, if we're talking about 80s attitudes, people did think it was a death sentence, but now it is a manageable condition and you can live indefinitely with HIV.
Even longer, some studies show.
Even longer. So why do these attitudes persist, Justin?
I think a lot of people's awareness sort of comes back from the 80s, I think, and, you know, when there were the large tombstone adverts, I think. And I think the problem is that a lot often people haven't had the chance really to update their knowledge. You know, I think the survey we did showed that 1 in 5 people still thought that you could get HIV from kissing. 30% of people thought you could get HIV from sharing a toothbrush, and that just simply isn't the case. But a lot of these myths come back from the 80s when, you know, there wasn't the knowledge available, that we didn't know as much about HIV back then. There was much more kind of fear around it. So I think that for many people is where they're still their reference point, I think. But one of the real kind of problems with that is that medicine has come on so far with HIV, it's completely transformed the experience of living with HIV at the moment. And people's attitudes and awareness just hasn't kept up with that.
Yeah, you know, Duncan, it used to be the case that people who were said to be HIV positive, found to be HIV positive, had to take a huge cocktail of drugs, antiretrovirals, and that kind of thing. What's life like for you now?
Actually, I barely even notice. Like, I sometimes forget that I take a pill because I just take it as part of my lunch.
Just one pill?
Just one pill once a day. That's all that I take, and that's for the rest of my life until we find the cure. But it's only a very small part of my day.
Until you find a cure, but, you know, compared to where medicine was, that's such a huge leap, isn't it? So it's a shame that attitudes haven't caught up with that. I mean, we've been talking about those tombstones ever since the 1980s. Is it time for a campaign to sort of spell out what life with HIV and AIDS is like these days?
I think it is, and you know, some of the campaigns we've been doing have been about trying to convey some of those like amazing things that have happened. You know, if you're living with HIV now and you're on successful treatment, you can expect the same life expectancy. If you're on successful treatment, you also can't pass HIV on to any of your partners. So successful treatment means you're basically uninfectious, which is amazing. You know, these are fantastic kind of achievements that we've really made.
By the same token, though, Duncan, it would be preferable not to be HIV positive. Do you think there's an element amongst some people of complacency about it these days because, as you're proving, it's something you can live with?
Yep, certainly. And, you know, I take responsibility for my status. You know, the only person that's responsible for that at the end of the day is myself.
So you're a bit laissez-faire about things?
Yeah. Well, you know, at the end of the day, it was my fault. You know, anyone else that I'm involved in a relationship or have sex with, yes, they should tell me, but it's my responsibility to protect myself from that at the end of the day.
So you think people need to still bear it in mind?
We do still need to bear it in mind, yes, but it is a manageable illness. And, you know, I talk about it as openly as any of my colleagues at work might talk about their diabetes or asthma. I believe, you know, it's comparable to either of those conditions, and it's not a big deal like what it was in the 80s.
Even so, Justin, it's still important to know the true picture of HIV infection. And is that something that's still difficult to get to grips with? Because, of course, some people just don't know they have HIV.
Yeah, you're spot on there. So, you know, for many people, you know, there won't be any symptoms for many years, actually, as well. So, and I think that's one of the things that's changed, I think. Now people can live well with HIV. You know, you don't have that same kind of image of it around sort of death that was in the 80s, I think. So because people don't see it as much, they don't think it's there. In the survey we did, only about 16% of people thought that there was still a HIV epidemic in the UK. You know, so everyone else just thought that, you know, that it just wasn't the case anymore. But we are seeing about 6,000 people diagnosed every year still with HIV. So it certainly is a kind of a big issue at the moment, but maybe because it's not so visible, people assume it is an issue.
A lot of good work's been done, but still some to do, it seems. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
It is almost a year since Storm Desmond brought flooding to thousands of homes and businesses, and some of the most dramatic scenes were at Glenridding in Cumbria, when its 19th century hotel was destroyed. Well, today the hotel reopened, marking a milestone for the village, but there are fears it still remains under threat from a similar storm that could happen again, as Peter Lane reports.
Storm Desmond turned the normally quiet beck here into a raging torrent. Floods and landslides cut the village off. The hotel at the heart of Glenridding was swamped, water racing through the building. This was one of the areas hardest hit in the misery of last December. Christmas was cancelled.
Water was running through this way, through there and into the bar, through and round. Came to about 3 foot, I would have thought. But
1 year on, they are finally back in business, but more fearful than ever of what the weather might do.
I get anxious when I hear that there's flooding going on in other parts of the country. I get very anxious for the people and what they have to go through, and also for ourselves, because we always in the back of our minds think, what if that happens again?
A year of work has seen the banks of the beck strengthened, so how much safer are things now for flood-hit areas like this?
We've identified where improvements can be made and are working to try and implement those, either through funds that we've raised or that we can help communities raise themselves. We're better at issuing flood warnings, and we're also better at responding during an incident and actually hoping to prevent some of the flooding happening.
In the midst of last year's flood, a local construction firm helped clear the beck. Robert operated the digger and has been dubbed the man who saved Glenridding.
It was challenging work, no question about it. Just mind-blowing the amount of stone that was in the beck. We didn't know how deep the beck was, we didn't know how wide the beck was.
With the weather much calmer this winter, Glenridding is open for business.
The tourists are back in town. It's great to see everything coming back together, the sort of heart of the village.
The last few licks of paint at the hotel, the Christmas trees are in place. It's been a long year in Glenridding, recovering from the damage done by Mother Nature. who today offered quiet skies. Peter Lane, 5 News.
Beautiful views there. Now, once upon a time, he was a cabinet minister, the shadow chancellor, a senior fellow at Harvard University, no less, an all-round pretty serious chap. Then he did this. Heavens above. Ed Balls swapped the green benches of Parliament for the black tap shoes of Strictly Come Dancing, cheering us all up along the way. Well, Minnie Stevenson's been to talk to Ed Balls about the highs of Strictly and coming back down to earth.
Goodness gracious, great balls of fire!
Now he's become affectionately known as Ed Glitter Balls, a political mover and shaker, yes, but it was his dad dancing with a difference which Britain really fell for. Cue a sad communal sigh across the land when judges finally booted Ed and dance partner Katya Jones off Strictly. One critic called it the Brexit of the ballroom. Today I met the man whose moves charm the nation.
So Ed, as we know, politicians and reality TV shows don't always mix. Before you went on, were you ever a bit worried that this could be sort of career suicide?
Well, of course I was, although I'd lost my seat. So my political career had already ended. But I was, an academic at Harvard, I was chair of a football club, and I wasn't a dancer.
Balls was the wild card of the ballroom, but it was in his own kitchen that he perfected those dance routines, as his wife, Labour MP Yvette Cooper, cheered him on every step of the way.
I imagine Yvette's been watching nervously sometimes. Do you think she fancies doing Strictly ever?
She would love to do Strictly, and the reason I did it was because I think she can't, and she said to me, go and do it for me, because she's a good dancer. She's enjoyed it. I think there were times when she was amazed, horrified, slightly appalled. The whole family's been at times a bit embarrassed, but they've also loved it, I think.
It was Ed and Katya's unique take on Gangnam Style, which turned out to be the biggest crowd pleaser.
I was a bit worried about whether I would actually mess up before we actually got to the impact moment, what we call the pony. But on the Monday, Katya said to me, it's going to be epic. And when during the week, we would do a film of our routine and then go home and show it to the family. And their reaction was, oh my gosh, are you really going to do that?
Having had a political career, you would have thought Ed had seen it all. But at 49, a new discovery.
Now, Ed, had you ever encountered fake tan before, and how did you find it?
I actually didn't think it was a real thing. When they said to me, do you want a fake tan in the first week, I laughed. Because I thought you either got a tan on holiday, or maybe you were under a sunbed. But the idea you had it sprayed on. However, live the dream.
Ed has joked his venture into the ballroom is an indulgent midlife crisis, and a very entertaining one. Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
Yes, priceless that was, wasn't it? That's it from us. Claire Nasir has the weather next. I'll see you again tomorrow at 5 and 6:30. Bye for now.